So I wanted to talk today about that primal pulse of God, that thing that we say is in, of, and through us. You know, we've been trying to crack at what that is forever. Forever. And we'll never have good words for it, right? But we're still going to keep trying, because that's part of human nature, is to keep going for that mystery and try to figure out what it is. So Tagore, who is a Hindu mystic, calls it a primal pulse, a life throb of ages dancing through our blood. I love that. A life throb of ages dancing through our blood. Eckhart, who is one of my favorites, an old Christian mystic, said, God is a great underground stream that cannot be dammed or stopped. It's an eternal flame that, just like I put in the affirmation, you can't put it out, right? You can kind of lose sight of it once in a while, but you can't put it out because it's what makes life life. And I like to think of it as a noble seed. That noble seed that cannot be changed. It's just always there. The question is, what kind of soil is around us to planting it? And how fertile is what you build around you so that it can grow to its greatest fruition? And so the more that we grapple and wrestle with this mystery of what this deep something is that's pulsing in us, the closer we get to understanding and knowing that seed. But you know what? The problem with this mystery is the more you get it, the more it opens up about how much you don't get. It just never, ever ends. And it gets harder and harder and more joyous at the same time. So, but we have clues. You know, a lot of people have wrestled with us for a long time, and we have clues. And we have clues in our own lives. We know when we're getting closer to it. Edie knew that when she settled down and she got into the flow, she knew something was going to happen. You know, and so we kind of, back in there somewhere, we all have this access. And the more we play with it, the more we gather like this to figure out what it is and experience it with each other, the more access we have to it at other times. So we know kind of what it has to do with. No matter what we say about it, we'll never be able to say it, right? You know, I'm going to crack at it from different directions today, but it's never going to be it. Right? The Taoists say that as soon as you name the Tao, it's not it. It's not, you know, we're never going to be able to say it. So I'm going to try to crack at it from a lot of different directions so we get a little bit closer today. But, you know, they say that some models are useful, but none are accurate. So, you know, no matter what world religion, no matter what model's looking at it, it's never going to be quite there, but we're going to give it a shot today. And we know that some things, like when we're loving, it's flowing, right? We know that when we bring our consciousness, our presence, our full being, we're pretty much usually in flow. No matter what kind of mood we're in, no matter how it's looking, we're tapped in somehow. And in gratitude. You know, Meister Eckhart said if you only have one prayer, let it be gratitude. Because we know that when we get into that thankful place, even when, like, how could I possibly be thankful for that garbage that's going on? If we can find that presence and fall into the gratitude, somehow there's a shift. Sometimes pretty small, but it's always there. So it's much more than we can ever name, but we do have a sense when we're aligned with it. And we know that everybody's experience of it is different. It's unique in each of us, but it's common to all of us. And that's kind of what makes it this noble seed. That noble seed, it's unique. Everyone has their own unique seed. And yet there's that commonality, there's that something, that oneness that brings us here, that connects us and has it grow because we come together with the intention to put light on it and to be present to that energy. So this is what the Hindu saints do. When you get in front of a really wonderful master, they give what's called darshan. And you just stand in front of this person and you, oh my God, you know, sometimes you see people just fall apart crying, laughing. They have all kinds of insights in their lives. And what the yogis say is they're just reflecting the divine light back. It's not that they're doing anything to anybody. They're just being a stand for that presence being so for who's ever right there in front of them and for lighting that charge up. But they say it's only what you bring that I can reflect back. So you don't put it onto the master, you come back internally to the mastery within and do the seeking from within. So we don't know what this is, but we know that scientists can put all the elements of a carrot into a lab dish, but they can't make a carrot. Because there's this life pulse that we don't know how to make. We don't know how to replicate. It's a great mystery. And whether you're atheist or theist or non-theistic or whatever your spiritual access point is, it doesn't change that there's this mysterious life pulse that has taken our attention. And for those who gather like this, we are seekers to align more and more and to access more and more that life pulse. So it's also referred to in the Taoist traditions as qi or qi, that fire in the belly, that energy. The shamans, who I'm going to tell you a little bit about as I go on, who I stayed with in the Amazon jungle, they call it arutam. And it's that earth. You really feel in the jungle, there's that pulse, that arutam, they really feel it deep inside. The Quakers quaked. In old days, they don't really do it so much anymore, but sometimes even in a Quaker meeting, if you know you're going to speak, your gut starts to cook. But the Quakers, actually, the early Quakers quaked because they felt that pulse so strongly. The leading was so strong to share. That is the ministry. Everyone says that of God in each is the Quaker understanding. And so they sit in silence, and when someone is pulsing, so much so that it's driving them to bring it forward, that they do. They stand up and they speak. So all kinds of ways of trying to access it. And it's kind of what the physicists say, there's kind of a universal pulse, right? What we know in physics is that life goes between vibration and matter, vibration and matter, vibration and matter, right? It's just this constant pulsing back and forth. Well, what's doing the pulsing? What's doing the changing? This is the mystery that we don't know. But the way that I like to think about it most is mojo. So let me just make sure we're on the same page. Give me some ideas. What do you think mojo is? Just call it out. What's mojo? Desire? Karma? Passion? Anybody else?
Being in your groove.
Being in your groove, yeah. Yeah, because that's right. We want the pulse. We want to be in the groove of the pulse coming through us, right? So energy, magic, vitality, that zest, right? Spirit, that's all mojo. Power, dynamism, drive, fire, zeal, zip, zing, pizzazz, that's all mojo. And spirit doesn't always feel pizzazzy, right? But still, when you got your mojo going, you got your moxie, you got your pep, you got your step, and even in the worst times, there's a way of stepping and being that, that mojo is still pulsing in spite of me, you know it's there. So it's not sourced. The thing about mojo and about all of this, it's not sourced by food, although we know certain dietary things can be conducive, like fasting or whole food eating, vibrationally, it aligns you a little easier, but that's not the source. It's not sourced by money. It's not sourced by fame or success. It's not sourced by poverty or suffering. And most people think it's sourced by money and all that jazzy stuff, but really deeper down, most people think if they just suffer enough. That's a lot of Buddhist thinking is there, a lot of Christian thinking is into that pain and suffering stuff, and I'm really a good person if I just suffer a little more. But, that it turns out it's not quite, it kind of doesn't matter. That's all the story and the drama. The life pulse is just an is. Just an is. So, but we do feel like we lose our mojo. And it can really feel lost. I mean, I'm saying these words today, but it's not like I'm in touch every day or every moment. And, there's sometimes I think it must be under my bed. It must be somewhere. Because I'm sure I don't know where it is in me, So, but it's always there to be realigned to, right? The Buddhists teach that you don't seek, you just attune to. It's not out there. you just attune to, you just be in. And so it's that calling back to the soul that's so important. It's not to strive for. We don't strive for this life pulse, because then when we try so hard for it, that's usually when we choke the life out of it. And that's usually when we make no possibility, because then we're really in our heads, or we're very closed off to what really wants to flow. So I wanted to talk about some time when I lost my mojo. And it kind of goes back to a Rumi idea. Rumi at one point said, there's some kiss that we want with our whole lives. So it's not a romantic kiss. He always used beloved with a capital B. And, when relationships are going well, though, it is there in that romantic kiss, isn't it? There is that pulse. There is that something. There's no accident that that's the beginning of where life comes from, right? When we divinely entwine with the other, and that's what the Tantra teachers were talking about. The Hindus said, we can't all go live on the mountaintop, or we wouldn't have any population. There's got to be a way for the householders to get to God. And they said, well, how about making love, right? When you really enhance that life pulse with each other, then that's another access route, and that's a whole line of teaching that I had studied a lot. And then I was in this horrible marriage, and I wasn't having any of those kind of Rumi kisses. And I was miserable. I was absolutely miserable. And but I was always a seeker, so I desperately wanted that feeling, and it was just so elusive. And my biggest tip-off was do you guys know where you're going to park? Who knows where they're going to park when they're headed downtown? This is pretty common. You do? Yeah. A fair amount of people kind of know ahead of time. Try it. Think about before you go downtown. Think, where I'm going to park, and it's really amazing. Some people say they call them the parking angels, but it's a kind of a simple thing, but it's pretty common that people experience this and find success. So I was driving downtown a whole lot, trying to handle my misery through acupuncture, and I couldn't find a parking place. So I thought, I'm really off. For me, that was an indicator. And in your own life, it might not be parking, but there are probably times and little clues in your own life when you know your mojo's not in gear, right? And for me, that was, I can't park, and this is not right for me. So I had this brochure on my desk that kept surfacing, and I kept putting underneath the pile. And I was, at that time, a student more of the Far Eastern studies of Buddhism and Taoism and things like that. And this brochure was to go to South America and study with shamans. Well, I was a little off my radar, but it kept pulling at me. And so the last time I couldn't get the parking place, I went, all right, maybe the easiest way to get a parking place is to go ahead and go to Ecuador. So I did. So I signed up. I signed up for the trip, and I got a registered letter in the mail that the people that were running the trip were not going to run it, and that I could either have all my money back, or I could put my money toward a trip that they were going to run, or they would refund the part that would have been theirs and give me the name of somebody in Ecuador, and I could go ahead and take the trip with this guy in Ecuador. I said, hey, I worked life out to go. I'm going to go. So 4 other pretty brave people met at the airport in Quito, and we took off. So getting a little ahead here, but so in the meantime, my marriage is like really sucking. I mean, there was so much pissosity in our house. It was toxic, It was really not healthy for anybody. I can't wait to get on this plane, and I'm scared, right? Because I've got a registered letter saying we have nothing to do with you, for legal purposes. Oh my God! And I was going to stay with the tribe of headhunters in the Amazon. So we're in, no Rumi kisses, no beloved. I'm like really more and more out of flow, and I'm trying harder and harder to make everybody happy in the house, and that's just damming the flow up, and it was just not working. So I'm feeling this really irresistible pull to get on this plane and go to Ecuador. And I did. And I had a little 2-year-old at home and a little 4-year-old at home, who are now in college, for those of you who remember them coming here, and doing well. And it was hard. You know, I was going really not knowing anybody, staying with a tribe of headhunters, and way out. The way there was the back of was a dugout canoe that dumped in a plain in a jungle grass runway, and then we got in a dugout canoe and started in jungle boots that were like up to here. And that was transportation. That was it. So before we got into the jungle, we started in the Andes with some shamans up there. And one of the first shamans that we saw was such a presence. He was speaking such truths, and I didn't know his language. But every question that we asked, I already knew what he was saying, the answer was. And the next questions, based on what he was saying, were formulating for me. Because he was such a magnanimous presence of that flow and that arutum and that mojo, that it was infectious, right? It triggered mine, and that's what we do for each other, right? You know, that's what we do. If your mojo's a little low, come have a little of mine today, right? I'll dance with you today. And that's what we do in sacred community. So, questions are flying all the way. And it reminded me of when the Tibetan monks give their final exams to the young monks. And I don't know if anyone's ever seen it, but it's a very dynamic process. And they're clapping, they're stamping, and they're laughing, and they're hysterical. And the teacher monk is clapping, and the student monk is clapping, and saying, and it's this really dynamic thing. That's a final exam. So there's mojo, right? I mean, there's spirit. They're testing, can you run this energy? Yeah, the information's important, we've drilled you forever, and if you can bring that through in the presence of this energy, then you can represent the divine and be a spiritual leader. So that's kind of the test there. So, as that energy is starting to pick up in this shamanic thing, I'm beginning to get more and more sense of connectedness, of where I was disconnected, and of being in sync with that pulse, and with connecting with it beyond words. It's so easy to try to say it and think it and write it, but it's so hard to be there in just the presence. And this guy was such a Christ-like presence. He just stood there and emanated that truth. And he had such a love of his village. He had they had strip mined for cattle raising, strip mined a whole mountain, and he had had a dream that he had unslakable thirst. And so he interpreted this dream to mean that he should re-enliven this mountain. Went to the village elders, and they said, "You're nuts, no, we're not going to support this." And he tried over and over again and just got more and more ostracized for wanting to do this, and he just went, all right. And then finally they said, you know what, you want to do this so bad, you're nuts, but we're just tired of getting in your way, just go do it. And so he took all of us up to this mountain place. We had this little spiritual thing around these little plantings, and this mountain was rejuvenated. It was still, low growth, but there was plenty of growth to know that it would come back. Just out of this love, out of this following that sense of being in tune and knowing the right thing, of listening to the mountain's call, of listening to his heart's call, no matter what all his neighbors were saying about him. So we visited a bunch of shamans on our way down into the lower lands, and one of them was named Maria Juana, and she did not partake, but she was really, we couldn't get a hold of her. So our guide was calling, just never got through, and he said, look, there's a really cool sort of marketplace not too far from her, so we'll go ahead and go in that direction. If she's not there, I've got a shopping experience for you. And, he was a climber, so we were climbing mountains all between all this stuff. And when we got there, Maria Juana had all of the right amount of ritual stuff set up for us and ready to go. So, of course, our first question was, how'd you do that? And she said, my huacas told me, her rocks, her sacred rocks. So, sometimes in some religions, and for some of us, we use talisman. We use ways that remind us, that connect us, that somehow represent that mojo, or we feel that mojo when we hold it or when we see it. And is it inherent in the rock? Maybe. Is it inherent in us? Maybe. Is it not inherent? Probably. Right? It's bigger than that. And then there were the guinea pig shamans. And I didn't do this, I just watched, I couldn't do this. But you take a guinea pig and you really make friends and connect with the guinea pig. And then the shaman starts to very gently kind of shake it around your body. And guinea pig nervous systems are very, very sensitive, so it dies in the process. And the shaman recognizes when it dies and takes all this into consideration. And then he starts picking it apart from the scalp with his fingers, and then he does diagnostics according to what he sees. And for the other people on the trip who did this, the diagnostics, and we were doing these things together, so we kind of had a sense of each other's issues. This guy was right on. He was right on, right? So this is his lineage, this is his understanding of how he accesses mojo, right? And be careful of judging these kinds of things. As gross as that sounds, how many lab rats got killed for some, I mean, it's you gotta kind of not look to apples and apples here. It's different place, different way. So then we finally we were trying to get into the jungle, and there was a massive landslide, and we were just stranded on the side of a mountain with like nothing there. And waited overnight there, and finally landed in the jungle, put on our jungle boots, which we were told, make sure you turn them upside down when you take them off, because the scorpions like to get in there, and you don't want to come back to a scorpion. So, and we get in the dugout canoe, and we get to this little encampment where we're going to stay. And the jungle is really just a whole different experience than anything I've ever felt. Life turns very quickly there. It goes from death to vibrant life to death again, really fast. So there's a churning of this primal pulse that doesn't stop. And because there's danger and it's all different, and I don't know what's going on, and there's a presence that's demanded in a situation like that calls you to this primal pulse, right? Because there ain't nothing else at that point, right? You've got to really rely on what is the most count-onable inner space here that I've got. And so that, right there, it's in your face, and you gotta get on it. So it's really powerful. It brings you to presence, and it also brings you to truth. Right? There's no time or space to BS yourself when there's fire ants ready to crawl up your leg. There's just too much. You just really got to get right there, sharp as anything. And truth though is funny because it changes, doesn't it? We think truth is a constant. The truth is always evolving. So, and where the land is evolving, there's a rhythm there, and so my truth was evolving very, very quickly in the experience. And it's that presence, you get to realize it's that presence, and it doesn't matter where it is. It doesn't matter, what it looks like. It's just being in that place. And so here we were, and it was so extreme. Just going to the bathroom was an incredible process. It really was a lot. And we're hiking a lot, and the jungle boots, every 2 minutes, we're filling up with water and mud and taking them off and dumping them out. And climbing up these huge things. So I'm getting more and more in touch, and as I do, there's a lot of pain and a lot of tears. And it was painful to recognize my truth at that point in my life. I was really divorced from that primal pulse in my own life. I was living day to day in a lie of trying to say I was married, and in my heart it was something that wasn't connected, right? So this truth was, oh my God, it was breaking my heart. And the more my heart broke, the more it opened again. And that primacy of nature and that kind of environment really pulls you along with it. So this primal pulse, it's not always pretty. Matthew Fox talks of the via negativa, falling into that pain of a hardcore, falling apart, crying and pain and suffering of, I don't know if there's a way out, that's it too. That's not it. And that's, I think New Thought often gets into trouble that way. We want to sugarcoat everything's wonderful. And the human experience is it's a both and. You know, we wade through. We go through pain and we come to joy. And we go through pain and we come to joy. And, you know, that pain brings us to higher joy. The deeper our roots go, deeper into the earth we can go, the higher to the heavens we are available. And so it's being able to release into that pain that's so important, not to brush it aside, but to actually fall into it. Boy, was I ever. And it was embarrassing. I was really on my own and kind of a mess. So, but I was in a culture, I was staying with the Shwa tribe, and the Shwa are very, very, very honest people. There's no lying, there's no stealing at all, period. And, you know, because their lives depend on it. It's dangerous in the jungle. And their lives depend on it. And, you know, truth does morph in a lot of ways, but being truthful to this presence, and this present moment, and this, you know, like with every breath, there's a new truth to be present to. So I'm opening and opening and opening to this, and trying to stay really mindful. And then we had this optional experience to drink a hallucinogenic plant called ayahuasca. And I opted. And it was a remarkable experience. First of all, you know, being with a tribe of headhunters and going to a hallucinogenic thing and no phones or no electricity. Or it was that alone was, you know, talk about leap of faith. So threw my guts up, which is what this does, and then went into this just amazing, amazing place. The property of the ayahuasca plant is oneness. And when their children are misbehaving, they give them some ayahuasca because they just figure they're out of sync with the oneness. They're out of sync with this pulse. And the plant is the medicine to realign with the pulse. And so, I mean, we think of it as you know, oh my God, I would never give my child a hallucinogen, you know. But in that culture, and in that understanding, it was a very efficient and effective way, and part of their spiritual experience. And so, you know, but they did it mostly, not so much for kids. I mean, it was really an adult experience, and it was a sacred and spiritual experience. And it really got me very aligned with my mojo. But on the way to doing that, before you take the ayahuasca, you have to fast. And our hosts wanted us to fast, wanted us to take a hike to a sacred waterfall. So we're in the jungle, it's already wet and muddy, and it's raining the whole time, and it had been raining. So rather than walk along the river, we were walking along very high ledges. And you can't grab for the next branch because there could be something on there that would have you jump back and jump, you know, lose your way down the ravine, down the cliff. So it was harrowing, and it went on and on and on. You know, every 2 minutes you're dumping the jungle boots and you're putting them back on and trying to get up these hills and through these mud things. And there was one other woman on the trip. None of us knew each other. We just met down there, and this woman turned out to be a phenomenal being. And she was very strong. She was in a really good relationship. And she was really proud of, she never needed a hand up. You know, she just got up every hill. And I had no support in my marriage. That was part of what was bugging me. I just had nothing there for me. And I was getting hands up all the time. And for me, that was the magic. I had support, I had connection, right? I had what I want, you know. That was really helpful. And I had it from these Shwa men are gorgeous. They're muscular, they're strong, you know, they're pure. They're very connected to family, even though there's headhunting in the culture. They laugh a lot. They're joyful a lot. They're connected to one another. It's hard to make a living, even though it's lush. There's not a lot to eat, so they work really hard to just live, and then they just be. And they laugh and they play and they have a lot of fun. So we're climbing up all these hills to get to the sacred waterfall, and it's just phenomenal. It's hot, water coming down this mountain. We're bathing and covering ourselves in mud and fasting all this time. Just a phenomenal experience. But the Amazon had risen several feet during that time. And so as we made our way back, we ended up having to do a white water crossing on a rope. I was not in shape for this. And the water's coming very, very fast. And I had been kind of flirting with a biologist who was on the trip. And you know, it was platonic, but there was some nice energy. He was a nice young guy, and we had some good connection. And there were all these guys. I mean, there were good people around, but I'm starting to loosen on this rope. I mean, I'm thinking about my kids. The water's got me pushed all the way back. It's rushing through my boots. It's ready to take my boots off, and I'm thinking, oh my God, I cannot get through the rest of this trip without these boots. And so all of a sudden this biologist is around me. And I was really losing it. I was just so close to having to let go, and I couldn't do it anymore. And all of a sudden he's around me. You know, and I think it was because we had that kind of mojo. We had that connection. You know, even though it was somebody else's job to do that, he got it. Because we were connected. Because there was that primal something, right? So when you feel that, it's real. Whether it's man, woman, whether it feels kind of romancy or not, you know, there's that vibe is really meaningful. So we're bushwhacking all this way. We finally bushwhacked back, and now we're ready to take the drink. And drink it. And it was remarkable. First of all, everything passed in front of me. I saw, you know, all these things about my life in like that, just constant, just a remarkable retelling. Almost, when they say when you're going to lose your life, you see your life in front of you. Well, it was some of that, but it was also the things were really, really up for me. You know, and I just went into this very strong spiritual experience, and just kind of feeling my purpose. And then there's really no words to explain this, but it kind of gets at this primal pulse. I was sitting on a kind of a peninsula right on the edge of the Amazon, and I just felt all of a sudden that the trees were my hair, and the water was my blood, and the earth was my tissue, and you know, I mean, the oneness isn't even a big enough word. You know, there is no word. That's the problem. We get at this stuff. This is where the Taoists have it right. There's no way to say this. But there is this knowing, this access point. And I could really feel this thing arising, right? Between that you know, my lust level had been risen earlier in the day from walking behind these gorgeous, lean, lanky, gorgeous, you know, hunky men, and in the sacred waterfall, and so much energy, and you know, saved by this guy, you know, like I was really feeling this wonderful, juicy energy. And you know, Socrates said that Eros, who is the god of erotic love, was the link between the man and the higher gods. You know, because it's that starts to get into that pulse. And so you feel that link with this higher stuff. But the shamans don't think of it as higher. That's more of a Western concept, right? It's up there. It's way down there for them. It pulses in the earth. It pulses. And they have this word they use called shungo. And when I rise, I don't just say it with me, shungo. 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 Yeah, feel it? You know? But if you're ever feeling down, just say that a bunch of times like a chant. It really pumps up the energy. So, it's really kind of like, well, it's what the Tantrikas talk about. You know, the Kundalini, the primal energy, that spark. Jung called it anima, right? And I think that shungo, that anima, shungo, you know, that feeling is really connected. But, you know, these are all ways that we get into it. These are ways, and for me this was kind of a hero's journey, right? It was my own personal hero's journey, and we all have lots of them. And they don't have to be big and dramatic. You know, I'm a bit of a drama queen, but I didn't really have to get on a plane to do this. I didn't have to go live in some exotic place. It's always right there. It's always right there. It's always, that waterfall that was flowing so beautifully and priming my heart. It lives in me, and that's why we do experiment and go to new and different places and try different things on, is because then we do bring a little home with us. And so sometimes, I haven't had it in a very long time, but that ayahuasca sometimes still does teach me here and there. The trial and tribulation with a child or a parent or a friend or a lover or whoever, sometimes it is right there for us because we can recapture that. And sometimes that we think of that sometimes as living in the past, but sometimes it's bringing the present, bringing what's so from all of us into this moment. It's not saying that part where I was really miserable, that's not me. That's how you cut the mojo off, by not embracing and pulling in that even that part that really sucked, that's me too. The Buddhists say the stone on the path is the path. Right? So it's embracing it all. So I was back in touch, from taking this experience, back in touch with that essential connection as we're sorting out very quickly. It still took me 3 years to leave my marriage, which I think is really interesting. It took me more courage and time to leave my marriage than to go drink a hallucinogenic drink with a bunch of headhunters. Because day-to-day life, we get sucked in. And I went right back out and didn't pull all my truth with me. I didn't live in actuality of that mojo. Right? I went home and let it dampen up again. Bit of a racket. And a truth I need to claim and work with as I go. So, it was the beginning of my journey out of my marriage, though, for sure. And I was able to shift this personal garbage and this racket and all my stuff into new light and into new context. And it is good to shake up the apple cart once in a while, no matter how we do it. It's good to step out of the comfort zone and give ourselves that chance to connect to that deeper self. So, but poisonous substances are not the only way. Ayahuasca is a liver poison, and you definitely feel that, and that's how it works. That's how the chemistry of how it does what it does. But it's not necessary. It's right here, right now, in every breath. It's here with every breath. We just have to relax into it. We have to let go into it. We have to just recognize, come back to it, remind ourselves, remind one another. That's why we're in community, to remind one another that pulse is still there. It never goes anywhere. It's the only constant there is. It's just such a mystery that we don't understand it, and so we forget about it. And we lose touch with it. And the trick is to just, however that expresses for you, to come back and take the breath. It happens in the next breath and the next breath. To just realign. To feel that shungo, to feel your rutum, to feel the chi, to feel the ki, to feel the presence, to feel God. Feel life, that life pulse that dances in your blood. And just coming back to the dance. It's all about the dance. Connecting to that primal dance, that primal God of life. That's all there is to it. That's all it is.